Hey guys, let's chat. Hello guys, and we're here for another Let's Talk with us, Linkaro, Toasty, and back by popular demand, the Professor.
Hello everybody.
Well, I'm not sure about popular demand, but might as well get this started. This time it's not going to be a stream. We're just going to do recording because I feel this is the best way we're going to approach this topic. And this is a topic that Toasty has something to talk about, but this is something brought up by the Professor. So, without any further ado, would you like to introduce us to this topic?
Yes, this is one topic that has always been around the skirts of other topics we have that Linkaro has talked about. It's always touched upon, but just superficially. But it's something very important now, and some of you might have heard about it. The casualization of gaming. Are games much easier now than before? At least that's how I define the term casualization. So, do we agree on the definition? Before we start, we want to make sure we have the same idea of what we mean by casualization. When we mean that games have been casualized, or do we mean that games are too easy, or does that include something else? Do you define it in a different way, or should we include something else into the definition?
I would take casualization as something that would be much easier, but also as something that would appeal to the casual audience, to those that don't play any of the console videos. I'll say more casualization as in people that plays mostly games mobile wise, don't really focus on the console gaming or the PC gaming.
Would you add something to it?
Well, honestly, I feel like the making games easier is only like a specific part of casualization. As more of a broader sense, I think when you speak upon games being casualized, and this is why it's not necessarily 100% bad or 100% good, because when you think about casualization, is what do they do with the game to draw in other people that might not necessarily have been a part of that audience. Say, for instance, so like maybe adding a character from pop culture, as in like as a guest character for, let's say, a fighting franchise. Like, let's say you take a popular AMC character from a popular zombie franchise and put them into a like popular among gamers fighting game, and like stuff like that. It's what do you add in? It doesn't always have to do with mode difficulty or adding like making games like more accessible or easier. It also could just be something just as simple and superficial as just adding a little reference, adding memes even to a game's dialogue, or as a joke in the game, or as a reference, it is not just one thing. And I think when we're speaking of the easier topic, that's just one aspect. So like, while that could be in someone's eyes terrible, that could be another point where they bring up and it's like, oh well, for me that's considered casualization, but you're saying that that's good, which means you're not completely against it. So I think the one thing that we need to take into consideration when we talk about it is that like it's pretty much it doesn't just it's not just defined by how the game plays, it's defined by what content is in the game and how they use things in context. So, and that will be something I will touch upon when it's my time to speak as well.
So basically, the definition that comes from this seems to be casualization. It incorporates several aspects. The one that comes to mind to me and to many people is that games are easier, but it also includes a broader audience. And I think that's probably the key part here. Yeah. You are trying to apply to a broader audience. So when we mean a casual player, it means somebody whose main hobby is not necessarily gaming, but they do play some games once in a while.
And sometimes, honestly, that's another thing about a casual. You could be a casual in and you could be a casual in something in a game, and then a complete pro in some other game. Like, I know people who are their heart and soul are fighting games, but they couldn't tell you jack crap about an action adventure or shooting, or like, for instance, me, I really like fighting games. I spend most of my time playing League of Legends, which are two totally different things. Monster Hunter is one of my major things, but I've kind of cooled down on that a bit. But like, when it comes to shooting games, if it's not Overwatch, I probably don't play it. Like, I'm not really a first-person shooter type of guy. I would consider myself a casual in that category.
But same with me. Like, I'm mostly first-person action fighter RPG guy. But when it comes to first-person shooter, horror, and all this stuff, I know nothing about that.
Yeah, mostly into action games, adventure games, horror games. I don't really touch much on the strategy kind of games or sports. So on shooter games as well, I don't really touch those. So yeah, we have our definitions down, so the audience knows exactly what we mean when we use some of these terms. So I think we can commence.
I think so. And I think now that we've broken down the definitions more, so I think it'll be easier now to pick a topic to categorize everything we talk about, so we keep those in line. So, like, right now, say for instance, I think one of the burning topics in all of our minds is difficulty levels. So I think that should be the first thing we talk about right now.
Yes. How difficult is the game, and what mode? That includes modes. Like, does that mode define what casual gaming is, and does it ruin other series for other people? And let me point that out. If the game gives you the option to play what it normally plays as, and the casual version, then I say don't bother with the casual version. If it bugs you that much, just play the way it, well, how it used to play. Well, I don't know if I said that correctly.
I think what he's trying to say is, if a game shows you different modes, let's say easy mode, normal mode, hard mode, that there shouldn't really be a problem if these easy modes are included, because you have the option of starting at a normal mode or a hard mode. I think I am in agreement with Linkaro here. I would agree with that. If there's different options on what level of difficulty you want to play as, I don't see any problems with that. In fact, I think that's good. It means that you broaden the audience of people who want to play the game. So when you have options and you give them options of what level of difficulty a player starts with, I think that's perfect, and I think that's progress when it comes to gaming. Where I have a problem with is when a game doesn't offer you an option of changing your difficulty, and the game is made easier. For example, the classic example that everybody knows of is Pokemon. It started as a relatively hard game, especially if you came to the game blind.
Especially
up until that
Pokemon Yellow,
yeah.
Your first gym leader is Brock, and all you have is a Pikachu.
Yeah, and where you could get soft locked if you wasted all your money, and then you release your water Pokemon and you were stuck on an island. Yeah. I mean, those were probably game design problems, right?
Yeah.
But the games were hard. Like, you got into the game, the leaders were challenging. The lead 4 could actually kill you if you were not prepared. But let's say after the 3rd generation, after Pokemon Emerald, once we hit the 4th generation, the Nintendo DS games, Pokemon seemed to actually get much easier. The rivals were easier. They holded your hand a bit more, especially in the latest games, Pokemon Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. They're fun games. I enjoyed them, but they guided me too much. They assumed I was stupid, you know. They didn't give me the option of exploring the land and finding it by myself. That was annotated and told me this is where you have to go, and the map will tell me specifically where. And at every single step of the way, you will know where to go. The story will always guide you. They will hold your hand throughout the entire game. And the same thing with the difficulty of the battles. Most opponents had only 2-3 Pokemon max. Even at the very end, where only in the final fight you get 6. I'm not going to burn it for those who didn't play it, but that makes the game way too easy. And yet, in the original games, Pokemon Red, Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon Blue, the enemies had more Pokemon with them, their levels were scaled, so your Pokemon were actually having a tough time if you were not prepared for them. So you could actually feel that the difficulty of the game went down as the series progressed. And this has hit a very interesting point in the Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu. Now, obviously, or at least they're not mainline series games, but they're calling them core games, so I'm still a bit confused on what they mean by that. But even if we take them on their own grounds, I think these games are made way too easy without any option of changing the difficulty. Anyone would like to add? Anybody who has played the games?
Actually, you know what? I would like to actually jump in as the Pokemon casual of the group, because if anybody in this group is a casual for Pokemon, it's me, because I don't play all the games. I literally choose the game that I end up playing by, I like this setting. Like, I played X and Y because I like the French setting. I jumped out when Black and White came out because I didn't like the setting and I didn't like the Pokemon. And I jumped back in for Sun and Moon because I love the Hawaiian setting of it. Now, I constantly have to defer back to everybody that I know for like typings, who does what. Sometimes I don't even know Pokemon's actual names because I rename all my Pokemon, and then like somebody will be like, "Oh, use your whatever," and I'm like, "Who the fuck is that?" Oh, sorry, I don't know if we're not supposed to cuss, but like I'm just like, "Who the hell? Who is that?" And they're just like, "Oh, your starter." I'm like, "Oh, you mean Mayor McBadass? I got you." So now I want to preference that not because I want to stick up for the easiness of the game, but because I want to agree with the fact that the games got way too easy. And the reason why I said that, because I'm the type of person I like to do stupid stuff in games. If this was an old Pokemon game, I should have never finished the game. I ended up finishing the X and Y in like a couple of weeks. And that was doing complete dumb stuff. Like one of the second to last gems, I think, is the fairy gem. And then I was asking my friend what were fairy types' weaknesses, and he was acting all high and mighty about it and telling me like, "Oh, you got this far in the game, you should know the weaknesses by now." And he was like, he was told me something about dragons. I was like, "Got it, dragon." He was like, "No, don't use dragon." I was like, "Got it." So I took a whole team of nothing but dragons. And theoretically speaking, that should have cost me a whole whatever you lose for losing. That's another thing. I don't even know what happens when you lose. As a casual player, as a person who doesn't play Pokemon, there is no excuse for me, a person who doesn't know what he's doing, to not know what happens when your character loses. I can't tell you what happens, not because I forgot, but literally just because I don't know what happens. It's never happened to me. And from what I understand and what I hear people talking about, like all this hot mess about Pokemon and how hard it's, like how much you have to actually think, how much you have to strategize and, get your Pokemon in order. I didn't feel any of that. I just literally was like, "Oh, I like this one. This one's pretty. Toss it out. Beat everything with it. Oh, Gordevour. Just destroy everything because why not? It's apparently the strongest Pokemon ever or something." But and so that's what I'm agreeing with you on the fact of doesn't feel like it punishes players. And that's just coming from a person who doesn't really play any other games. I didn't feel punished at any point, or I didn't feel like I was in danger of losing anything. I didn't feel like my Pokemon was in any peril. Anytime I went into a battle, I didn't feel like I was going to lose that battle. The only time that my Pokemon playing prowess, my mettle was tested, was when I played against friends. And then the optional stuff like the
battle trees,
the battle
trees,
trees,
which I didn't do.
Like
Again, because I'm a casual, I didn't even do any of that. I literally don't know where any of my Pokemon games are because I didn't. Once I passed it and played a few times and pretended like I was gonna. Well, not even pretended. had intentions of getting serious and started doing the breeding and EV training and was like, this is taking forever. I'm going to play Monster Hunter, or I'm going to play League of Legends, or whatever game I was into at the time, I just lost interest. And I think that's another thing that when this backfires is when casuals start getting actually interested in the game, and then they realize that this is not fun. Like, it's just boring because it's too easy. And then it backfires because then they want to stop. Then they don't want to play anymore. And because they're probably new to the series or new to the entry, they don't have the experience of, oh, the games could be harder. Or, oh, if you do the battle tree, it's going to be difficult. Because that's not what you presented them. And then there's also the other effect of the battle tree being harder can turn them away from playing your game in general. Now, I know it might seem like, oh, well, why would they care? You bought the game already. You gave them their money. Well, Pokemon, as we know, is a game that kind of comes out on a, like, yearly basis almost. Actually, probably, like, I'd say about every 6 months or so.
I would think part of the problem is that the game is made so easy that by the time you get to the battle tree and the battle mansions, the game gets too hard. So there is no progression from easy to
Basically,
hard.
I could tell you, like,
And then you
with
just
my
quit.
with my experience, I think I was more of a casual with Pokemon Crystal Ball when they first introduced the Battle Tower. I was like, oh, you just need this level. It's like, okay, fine, I'll just take these Pokemon level at these level. I got my butt kicked so hard because I didn't know, like, the whole mechanic. The hidden mechanic that more recent Pokemon game are now just explaining to you.
Yeah, and I think let's go back to Pokemon Let's Go, the Let's Go series, because it's the most recent ones.
Even I wouldn't touch that.
And I would tell you what the main problem with these things are. These games are advertised so most people, the casual crowd, basically people who play Pokemon Go once in a while, who don't really know much about Pokemon today, so they will get interested in these games. But when they play Pokemon Let's Go, they're not going to get the essence of what Pokemon is now. They have a very limited option of Pokemon. Understandable, they want to keep with the tradition of Red and Blue. But they took out several things of modern day Pokemon. There are no wild battles, which is key to the Pokemon experience. Mm-hmm. Pokemon don't have their abilities anymore, which is key to the Pokemon experience. There is no breeding, which is key to the Pokemon experience. So you want to get the crowd involved in Pokemon, but then you're giving them a half-assed work. So how are these people going to understand what Pokemon is today and get them involved into this world if you're just giving them an HD version of Pokemon Red and Blue, the original ones? I don't think that's the right way to get the crowd back into this game. You can give them, for example, difficulty options so they can play in easy mode if they want, and I think that'll be fine. Handhold them a bit just in the beginning, but not throughout the entire game. But show them the real Pokemon experience. Give them wild battles. Show them some of the mechanics. In fact, I think they could probably make these mechanics more explicit. You know, tell the players there's these things called abilities and there's such a thing as IV breeding. Because these things are in the game, but players usually in Sun and Moon and other games, they had to look online for these things. Mm-hmm. Just make them explicit. That way it's easier for casual players to understand what's going on. And then they can progress at their own pace and start understanding how Pokemon works. You can keep the original 150 if you want, but give them a full Pokemon game. They could have done that. I think that would have been perfect. The way Pokemon Let's Go works right now, it's incredibly easy. Hand holds you throughout the entire game, tells you where to go at every single point, so there is no exploration. The battles are so easy. In fact, the few battles there are, because you only fight trainers. You don't fight wild battles, except for legendaries, I think. And a couple, and the Snorlax.
I have not gotten to that point yet, but from what I heard, yes, it's the trainers and legendary Pokemon only.
Yeah, so I think the Pokemon Let's Go games is one of those missed opportunities, and it's one of our classic examples of my problem with casualization. You make it so easy, and without giving the players the option of changing difficulties, that it just becomes boring. And this is something that has happened with other games. For example, Linkaro and how do they call you here? Toasty, yeah. They have played some more games, more than I have from the last two consoles, last two generations of consoles, so they will know. Give me some examples.
I own all 4 peripheries that you can play video games on: a PC, an Xbox One, a PS4, and a Switch. So, and like I'm a sucker for, like I'm gonna say I'm a sucker for nostalgia. I play some of the remakes and some games that have been remastered. So I can kind of, or like some sequels.
So give me some
There's-
examples of games
Okay,
that
well-
don't give you a difficulty option, but you feel have become easier compared to a past entry.
Okay.
I
I
honestly,
was.
I have one off the top of my head.
Go ahead. Go
If
ahead.
you want,
I was
like-
gonna go with like here's something that I was gonna bridge it to a game that actually did the whole casualization better. Then let's go. But let's see.
Well,
what you have to
first-
say.
Let's go with the bad ones first.
Yeah, let's get with the bad ones because I want to end. I want to end topics on the good notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I don't want people to just be like, "Oh, it's all just negative." Because again, I will say before I go on to this, casualization isn't bad because it is not. It as long as it doesn't isolate lifelong fans. And the thing is, I like it because it gives like a brighter audience, more people to talk to, and you as a veteran player should take like newer players under your wing and teach them if they allow it. Now, I'm going to get to a game, and I know this is probably going to ruffle some feathers for some people who enjoy it. And I want you to know when I say this game series is not because I started not enjoying the games. It's just simply that they became way too easy for my liking, and that series is Monster Hunter. I'm coming from a place as a person who in high school I was introduced to Monster Hunter on the PS2, and my most fondest memory of it was playing it, not really understanding what was going on in the game, and getting destroyed by a monster that now me and my friends just would kind of. Like, we had a thing where when it was our birthday, we just killed that however many of them as our age. Like, when we turned 18, we killed 18 of them. So what I'm saying is, like, in the PS2 era, the PSP era, that's when I played Monster Hunter the most, and that's when I enjoyed it. That's when I would play it and just be like, oh man, this monster's tough. Like, and then I remember when it got ported over to Nintendo systems. The first one was on the Wii. The Wii. And I went to a friend's house to play it because I didn't have any aspirations to get a Wii because there was nothing I wanted on the system at the time. But I went to a friend's house to play it, and after a while, like, fighting the monsters, I didn't even care about their weaknesses. That's how, like, easy the game had gotten, to the point where it was just, like, one of the things back in the day now, and actually this is going to be a point that I do want to bring up at some point, is that we do have to talk about, because there's a thing called artificial difficulty, and then there's also difficulty through poor game design. Some of the Monster Hunter games back in the day were difficult because of poor game design. I am not talking about those. I'm talking about ones where the monsters actually did a ton more damage than they do now. As a matter of fact, I'm going to fast forward to Monster Hunter Worlds. Because out of all the Monster Hunter games, all the ones that were on DS, all the ones that was on 3DS, all the ones that was on, the one that I right now have the most problem with, even though I still play it every so often, is Monster Hunter Worlds. And the reason why I have such a problem with it was because it was simply too easy. I felt like they took a lot out of it, and it was all to make it not be so overwhelming for newer players. Now, little by little, because it's treated like a pseudo MMO, they added things in by events or whatever, and then they would add things that were like not Apex. They would add things like the arch-tempered Elder Dragons, which for me felt a little bit more like a slap in the face, because these weren't hard because they were harder monsters. They fell under the trap of artificial difficulty. Because the old Monster Hunter would be like, you went from low rank to high rank, and then high rank the monsters got a little, because you have gotten used to them, they got a little bit more spry about them. Like, now you no longer drop into the you don't no longer drop in with supplies. You don't drop in at base. You drop it in a random spot. You have to wait a random interval of minutes for supplies to show up. Even the way some items worked got changed, and for me, like, while in some cases is okay, there's some items that I'm just like, the fact that this was limited was what made the game. Like, the fact that this was limited and it counted as item space, it made you have to, like, really think of what you wanted to bring. Some people say, well, they compensate that by making what you can bring, your inventory, smaller. To me, it still feels like they've taken out the idea of actually strategizing what to take. Because there's just these items that you standard will take, and that's it. That's all most people take. But, and the problem I have with the artificial, like, difficulty in terms of fighting monsters, I remember when, like, monsters would get harder because once you get to G rank, now they have added moves to them. Now they link their moves more. They fight more ferociously towards you. They do deal more damage. They do have more health. Now the thing with tempered and arch tempered and event quests, it's like, okay, well, here's an event where you fight this monster, but it's just bigger. And I'm just, well, okay, cool, why not? And then they do that like 10 more times. And then there's like, oh, well, here's arch-tempered Elder Dragon, but, like, now it's difficult because it has a mode where it's invincible except for the head. And it's like, well, that's not fun. It's not hard. It's not hard because, whoa, this is a real challenge. Now it's just hard because it's annoying. Because now you just can't hit this particular monster. And then also the problem with that type of thing is, it feels like the reward on it is lessened. Because at the end, it's not like you get something majorly awesome. It's just kind of a standard item. And that you can just only get from this quest. And it's like, and I know it sounds like complaining in some points. Because, let's be real, it is. Because it is like, and you could say it's, oh, you're playing off of nostalgia. Maybe, but the problem is, like, I feel like making games easier without having an option to, like, just skip the easy. And that was another thing. You can't just skip the overly easy stuff. After playing, like Monster Hunter after Monster Hunter after Monster Hunter, I don't want to keep doing the easiest missions. I want to jump right into the meat and potatoes of the game. And it's a slow start. And it doesn't give you that option to be like, okay, well, do you want to go through this? This is basically tutorial. Do you want this? No? Alright, well then, here's your first urgent hunt. Just do this, and then you can go through the rest of the game. No, it's like, okay, we're going to teach you how to climb. We're going to teach you how to walk. We're going to teach you how to use the base. We're going to teach you how to use the map. And I'm like, I don't need this. I know what I'm doing. And again, I'll say, after all this complaining, though, is not bad enough to make me completely hate the game. It's just was something I noticed, and honestly, and I think if a game can do that where it could be easier, but you as a veteran player, you don't completely hate it, then it should be somewhat fine. It shouldn't be too big of a problem. It's when, like, games are like, let's say for instance, if Fire Emblem were, it was just Phoenix mode now, that would make you hate it. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Long-winded point over, but like, let's go to
Linkaro, you have some examples.
I got an example of a good casualization, which actually, how he ended is a good bridge to it, because Fire Emblem is a good way of how to, quote-unquote, casualize and still keep things good for the veterans. Okay. So for those who probably are got into Fire Emblem since Awakening and doesn't know how the old games work, here's the thing: you got like a group of squad, and you're trying to like complete a map. Take SHARPG stuff. Now, the problem that many people who are not as invested with Fire Emblem back in the day, or just don't have the time, will feel kind of alienated with the whole permadeath mechanic that the game had, which is if one of your units HP gets to 0, they're gone for good. And that could be really frustrating if you put all your time and effort to build that one unit to become one of your main hitters, and then all of a sudden they die, and the only two choices you have is continue the game without that unit and find a good substitute, which you probably won't because you're probably going to ignore all the other units you recruited. Or you press the restart button and do the level all over again. Which, I do that a lot. Now, come Fire Emblem Awakening, they give you 2 modes. Classic mode, which is the typical Fire Emblem way, and the classic and casual mode, which is basically you won't be punished because your unit died, or because you're a bad move, or if RNGesus decide to say screw it and kill your unit just for the hell of it. Darn you, 2% critical hit. Toasty said it and said, when Faith came around, they added a new mode, which is called Phoenix mode, which allow your units to come back when it's your turn. And like he said, that actually pissed off a lot of people. The good thing about Phoenix mode that is only reserved for only casual mode, and if you're playing on the easiest difficulty, which is normal. What were you? I don't know what you thought of Phoenix mode, and after I just explained to you the limitation, what do you thought about that mode?
As long as it's a mode that is optional. If it's forced into the main game and you don't have any option of changing difficulty, then yes, I will have a major problem with it.
Yeah. So
in my view.
So exactly, but you experiencing the full difficulty of Fire Emblem, especially in the newer game, is still there. They just added an option so new players can get into the game, and then once they're ready, they say, okay, I'm ready. Let me try out how this game is supposed to be played, and I could be ready for it. And that's something that whether people will like this type of mode or not is the reason why this Dying franchise just gave a second win even bigger than it was before.
That makes sense. And I have another example of a game that makes sure that it's accessible to more audiences. And many of you have heard these games: Donkey Kong Country Returns, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and I will explain why. When you play those games initially, especially with Returns, there is no way of changing the difficulty level. With Tropical Freeze, you do have an option of difficulty levels. You can play normal mode with Donkey Kong, or Daisy mode, which is with whatever his freaking name is. Funky Kong. Yeah, Funky Kong, which makes the game way too easy.
Funky Kong.
Oh yeah.
Funky Kong.
But let's talk about the normal levels. Alright, so let's play Donkey Kong in Tropical Freeze, and the normal and only mode you start with in Returns. These are admittedly difficult platformers compared with many other platformers that exist at this time. You play them, you will have some difficulty, but you can make the game easier on yourself if you feel this game is too hard. You will reach a certain point in the game very early on where you can buy extra hearts, which gives you an extra life. So if your character gets hit, you can survive one more hit. You can get a shield, which is going to protect you against several attacks, and you can buy lives, which are very plentiful in the game anyway. So if you feel like the game is too difficult for you, and let's say you are somebody new to the game, you can make it easier on you by using some of the in-game currency that exists. Or you can play the game as intended and not use those extra items and just try to beat the game normally without any special items in these levels. So this is a good way of scaling difficulty without including a hard mode. Why? Because you can play the game as intended, where difficulty progresses and the game gets harder and harder as you go on. Or if you're new to the game, or if you want a little kid to play it, for example, or you're not very good at platformers yet, you can start using some of these items and make life easier for you. And I think that's completely fine, because it's optional. You decide how you play the game. This is how you can also incorporate a scaling of difficulty without having to completely dump down the game. And one more thing I love about these two games, you have an option of making it harder on yourself. If you manage to beat all the levels and you collect what they call the conch letters, basically special letters that exist in every level, if you do that in every single level in both games, you open a special difficulty, which they call mirror mode. Mirror mode, which is where you start the game without any items, without any conch companions. In the normal game, you usually have an ally with you, and with only one hit point. So now the game is far more difficult, similar to what people call Nintendo hard. As some people might say, these are impossible levels of difficulty, but you have this extremely difficult level if you so wish. And I think this is a very good way of implementing scaling difficulties without having to incorporate easy mode or hard mode, because that's already, you can scale it yourself as you play along without having to create artificial difficulty for yourself. You know, like in Pokemon, where many people put themselves certain restrictions. I will only use Pokemon of X type, or I will not use Pokemon that get KO. So they have to create their own difficulties because the games have become too easy. You don't have to do that with Donkey Kong if you don't want to.
So, again, I would like to play devil's advocate, because I did go on a bit of a rant about how difficult, how the difficulty have gotten easier on, say, for instance, Monster Hunter. And the devil's advocate I want to say is, like, games that don't give you options and they just kind of get easier, it's not always a bad thing, because with a game like that, for instance, there's no real way to give you a choice for you to play it harder, because at the end of the day, it's meant to be played with other people. Now, so, like, I have a friend that plays, and she openly admitted that, like, if the game was as difficult as it used to be, she probably would have never played. Because, like, because I remember I let her play one of, like, my old games. I let her fight a relatively easy boss, and she got wrecked by it, because relatively easy for me isn't relatively easy for a person who's never played the game. Now, the fact that this game, the monsters weren't as erratic, it kind of helped her ease herself into the series. But, and the thing about, and the other thing is because it's an online game, there's no real way for you to mitigate that. And then on another topic of another game that kind of has gotten more quote unquote simpler, but like, it's all around, and it doesn't really, like, in my opinion, make it any worse. It's just easier. Is honestly a game that we've all been playing recently, Super Smash Brothers. I feel like that game right now has more accessibility than it did back in the Melee era. Why? Because there was a lot of things in Melee that you just kind of had to know, and there was no real way of being good against people if you don't know that. And the thing about it now is that, like, it's streamlined. It's always had easy, simple controls. But they've gone to a point where it's easier to understand a character from playing it. Like, it's not like back in the day. It was like, okay, well, this character's up B sucks, but there's a way you can use it well, and you can do this, and that, and the other. And here it's like, okay, I know my character's up B sucks, but I can get back onto the stage if I just follow this simple rule. And the rule sets itself out in front of for you on its own. Like, for instance, a character I know well is Incineroar. He has a terrible recovery. But the thing is, I learned just by playing the game, like, oh, I can just side B, then up B. But the problem, and the thing about that, like, back in the old Melee era, I didn't feel like that was a thing that I could learn. It was just kind of like, oh, well, you gotta do this and tap your controller to the left 5 times before you do you. What's wrong with you? You stupid. You gotta tap down as soon as you touch the stage or you're gonna fly. And it's like, I'm not gonna remember that because I'm not a person who plays that particular game all the time. And in this one, you don't have to play it all the time to understand it. And I know it's like really small things, small details that made the game slightly easier, but it's across the board. It isn't. There's no option to be like, okay, well, do you want to play a difficult version of it? Aside from story mode, which I'm not counting that. I'm counting that there's just the core online version. So again, game like I know it seems like again we're just really doing this whole. It's bad to make the game easier, but that's not the case.
It's not really the case. If you're with us right now, we explained a good case and several bad cases as well. We're not saying easy game or making game easy equals horrible. That's not the point of this conversation.
A game being easy doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad game. We're just saying from a standpoint of it is what it is. This is what making a game appeal to casuals does.
Give us the options to change the difficulties.
Exactly.
That's something I would add, yeah. Like, give us the option. So, veteran players, if they want a harder mode, give us the option for harder mode. Give us an easy mode, or some ways of making the game easier for new players and the casual crowd. Now, one thing we should make clear here, we use casual, but not in a bad sense, not in a derogatory term, but for people who are not really into gaming as a main hobby.
Yeah. And I think because of the gaming community as a whole, the term casual has really gotten a negative rap that it doesn't deserve. Because, like, if we're in a conversation and I say that, and I say something about a game you don't really know, and I go, you only play casually. It shouldn't be cause for the other person to be like, to turn into like a raging angry beast because the gaming community has told them being a casual is inherently bad. It's not. I'm telling you right now, it's not inherently bad. If you don't play something a lot, if you don't have aspirations to play that thing a lot, you are a casual at it. Casual is actually, it's not that big a deal. It's not bad to be a casual. Like, it is what it is. It's just a way to identify, like, how you game. Like, there are some, and the thing, like I said, you can't be a pro at everything. You can't dedicate all your time to everything. There's not enough hours in a day. There's not enough days in life. So, again, just so you know, like, and I think we should have probably prefaced this at the beginning, but just because we're using the term casual, this isn't a hit piece on casual gamers. This is more just kind of directed at a rant about gaming in general and how we personally feel about the modes as people who have played games, and we're now all in like a more adult life right now, and we've grown up with all these different types of games. This is just how we feel about gaming today and our role in it.
Do you have any thoughts, Linkaro?
He says everything that I said.
So, I guess we talked very in length about this subject.
Talked like almost.
How long was it?
Like, we started at 9:40. This is 10. Going to be 10:30. Almost an hour. So this is like 15 minutes.
See, and that's what I was saying. Like, when it comes to the quote unquote casualization, it's not just one thing. And all of the points of casualization can be talked about at length in any capacity, because like right now we just talked about difficulty for like almost 2 hours. Right?
1 hour.
Well, almost an hour. Oh, why did I say 2 hours? I'm sorry, I'm tired.
That's usually our length of streams.
But like for almost an hour we talked at length about just games being easier. But the thing is, that's not all that goes into what makes a game casualized.
We can talk about the broadening the demographics of players.
Yeah, they're like we just explained about how one mode can grab so many people into a franchise. We talked about how giving you other options can make things easier, especially for the younger demographics who are interested in the franchise, but they're not skilled enough or like have the patience to go through such hard levels.
Yeah, and one thing, many people, if you go to, let's say, online gaming boards, gaming websites, you will see players be angry that casual players are getting inside their games. You know, that they're getting to their turf. I think that's frankly a stupid way of thinking. Why? Because when you have more customers in this game, it makes the game more popular, which means more sales, which means a possible sequel. The best way to make a game die is by not making it accessible to anyone.
Yeah.
Like I said, look at Fire Emblem. It almost died. It almost died because the demographic in this level was very limited.
Because the thing about Fire Emblem is the reason why it almost died when its players started to become college students, full-time workers, part-time workers, and everything. It's because on top of being difficult, Fire Emblem is a very long game. And actually, really, any RPG is a really long game. So if you have people like us who played it faithfully in high school, chances are we're not going to play it faithfully when we get to college, because we want to play things that we can finish. And we're not going to get to finish Fire Emblem by the time the next game releasing cycle. Because let's be real, being a gamer, your main passion about games is not just playing them, it's buying and trying new ones. So if I'm playing, let's say, Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, and because those are only on the GameCube, if I'm playing those and I only have 2 hours a week to play video games, that's going to take me damn near 2 years to pass. Now, and it's going to be even longer if I say I want to pre-order something and play that too. That then is going to end up like how I am now, where I have games that I've bought and that I haven't completed, and so what I'm saying is, again, I keep going on these long little diatribes, and I'm sorry about that, but what I'm saying is, you want to appeal to younger people who have more time to play this, and the best way to do that is to ease them into it. Give them something a little easier starting point to be okay, your characters won't always die, because then also that maximizes replay value, because then they'll be alright, well, now I want to see if I'm good enough to keep them all alive.
Yeah, exactly, and that would brought Fire Emblem back to the market. Hell, it made it bigger than it was 5 years ago.
I mean, also there's the whole adding waifu culture into it.
That's fates.
Again,
Awakening is a little.
Like I said,
they added that's 7
adding
years ago.
waifu culture into it.
I'm going to mention one here. I will probably get hate for this, but one of these games that is extremely long, and it's the reason why I haven't been able to play it, and I'm very hesitant to play it now when my time is so limited. Persona 5 and the Persona series. Mm-hmm. I like the games, they're fun, but if you don't have, but the games are way too long, 80 hours plus. That's going to be a barrier. That is really going to be a barrier. Now that I'm older, now that I have less free time on my hands, that has really kept me from playing the latest entry. And I'm pretty sure that has happened to a lot of people, and I think this is one of those series that might hit some problems down the road at this point. And Persona is not really famous for being the most popular series out there, and I think this is one of the possible reasons why. Mm-hmm. The entry point can be way too difficult. You have to devote so much time to it to even get to the end point, that can be a barrier, especially for many casual players or the average player, just throwing it out there, I will probably get some dislikes for it and some insults, but that is fine.
Dude, don't worry if you do.
You get this.
Just know I'm right there with you on that. Because I'm currently playing Persona 5. You know how long I've been playing Persona 5? almost. When did it come out? Like
It came out in 2 years ago.
okay, so then I've been playing it for almost 2 years now. Because I had it on PS3, I started it and named my character after Seth Rollins because he gets his kneecaps busted. And I thought it was funny. So and then I just kind of stopped because I was like, man, this is gonna take forever. I can't do this. Now I got a PS4 right after, borrowed it from Linkaro, and I've had his game ever since. And I've only cleared like one. What is it called? Heist. I've only done one heist, and I've started another one. I was like, man, I'm not. And the first one took so long that I'm just like, I don't feel like doing this. I've got other games that I want to get into. I know it's kind of oxymoronic that I have now 4 systems that I play on, because like you're like, well, I bet you're like, well, you just said you don't have a lot of time to play. Well, that's the thing. I end up playing games that like are quick pace, easy to play, or even just kind of more, just less involved is a better word, because Persona could get really involved.
Yeah, for me personally, and a good RPG game, for example, RPG games, 30 hours I think is a very decent time for these games. 40 hours I would accept. But if your game takes 50 plus hours to finish, you probably have an extremely long game, and I don't think most of it, I'm pretty sure, is going to be based on grinding. You know, that's going to be spent grinding.
Well, Persona 5 kind of got rid of the grind.
Yeah, you don't have to grind.
Okay, good. See, that's the reason why I haven't played it, because I had to grind in Persona 4 and 3. So, you know.
Yeah. Like, it's very easy.
Don't think that lessens how long the game is.
No.
Because you still could only talk to certain people on certain days. So, and then it's just so much to it's all about micromanaging, and I'm already dealing with micromanaging in life. I don't want to have to play a video game where I have to micromanage as well. It's too much. It's just too much. Like, I don't want to have to remember Tuesday you could go to the laundromat. Oh, you could only go to do the burger challenge between 8 p.m. and this. But also you need to make sure you study at least once or a couple of times a week. And then it's like, oh, but remember, if you do this, you won't be able to do this. But also, you want to talk to this person early so that now you can sneak out or you can go out at night. And I'm like, okay, give me a second. I'm going to turn this game off. As a matter of fact, I'm going to plug in the PS4. I don't want to look at this anymore. This has now become stressful.
Yeah. Now, some of you hearing this might say, well, maybe we're not the audience anymore. But these are games rated 17, 16 plus, right? Now, we are people who have to go to school. Maybe we have jobs. We have other hobbies. We have personal lives. If a game has to take so much of our lives that we might as well just be unemployed to finish them on a timely basis, that's probably not a good thing.
Yeah. That's not good.
Yeah.
We gotta live somehow.
And
we gotta find a way to buy these games.
And now the point that you brought, like, oh, that it might not be for us, actually, that is actually what we're defending when we're defending the casualization of the games. Because we are admitting that while we still enjoy these things, we may not be the target audience anymore. So you kind of have to think about your target audience now. Yeah, casualizing the series and stuff to hook them in and pull them in is all fine and good, but the thing is, once you have that fish on the boat, how are you going to hold it on the boat? Because the fish that you caught with that bait is still lively and wriggling, and there's other people trying to grab at it too. So, like, if your casualization somehow takes away from the game, that's just going to, like, be a fish that you're just going to catch and release. And weird fishing analogy aside, basically what I'm saying is, how do you maximize the fandom? And, like, and that's all I'm saying, because, like, we didn't have this thing when we were growing up, and somehow it worked. It brought us in. But I'm seeing more and more series or just games in general go dead because people jump into it and be like, man, this is the best thing ever. And then once they're just like, this isn't this is garbage. And now they released the second one, and it's even more garbage. And honestly, that is the trend lately of almost all games, especially games with sequels. Or, like, I can't tell you how many times I've listened to a YouTuber go, "Oh, it's not this number 5 is not as good as number 4," or I can't believe they actually thought this was going to compete with the last game. All right, I'm not going to buy it. I'm just going to stick to the. And it's like, for me, as a person who's a gamer and as a person who is admitting that they're kind of getting out of the prime of their gaming life, to turn around and see the fact that, like, gaming companies are dying because of choices that they're making. To see that games that I loved, like, people look at you and be like, that fucking series is garbage because of a recent game that came out for it was garbage because they tried to do something that just didn't, like, they tried to make it easier, or they tried to add something to appeal to casuals that just didn't hold those casuals. It kind of hurts, and that's why we're having this discussion.
Why was I thinking of Devil May Cry?
Well, Metal Gear, the latest game, you said that compared to the other ones, it's not even a Metal Gear game.
No.
Metal Gear Survive?
No. We don't talk about that. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
That has everything to do with what we're talking about. The fact that you're saying that is exactly what we're talking about. The fact that it's a Metal Gear game, but compared to other Metal Gear games, you're like, we don't talk about that because it's not a. That's what we mean. Like, these, like, if it's okay to do new things, it's okay to make games easier. It just has to work, and that's my whole thing as a person. I don't care what you do. Just like everybody always talks about, like, you know, virtue signaling or SJW subjects or whatever. I don't care as long as you make it into a good story. I don't care what the hell you want to talk about. I don't care what your soapbox is. As long as your story is compelling and you pull people in, write what you want. But, and just like this, as long as your game is compelling, I don't give a goddamn if Metal Gear becomes a slice of life farming simulator. As long as it's fun, compelling, and worth playing, and people like it. That's all that matters. And the fact that you have a game that people don't even want to talk about because it's just that damn bad, that's exactly what we mean. That's exactly the problem. And that, like, while there's not necessarily, like, what is it? It's not necessarily casualization. It still goes along with the fact that they're adding stuff or changing stuff that's not working. So, yeah.
Okay, yes. As long as we agree that it didn't work for Metal Gear.
Oh, no, it didn't. That was the problem. That's the problem. It doesn't work at all.
Well, I guess we done talking with everything we had. That's like about an hour we talked. With some edit, we're probably going to cut down some of the fluff. So, thank you for joining us. We had kind of did this like a couple of months, like some time ago. But hey, if you'd like to hear us talk about something about the gaming world, we'll be happy to talk. Mm-hmm. We'll try to bring in the professor if we can.
Comment section, what topics you're interested in. And yes, maybe we'll see.
Yeah, just write in the comment section.
And if you disagree, it's fine. Actually, honestly, there's no such thing as debate without disagreement. So if you disagree, or if you do have a problem with anything we said, honestly, put your opinion. There's another thing that's a problem with the world state. People are afraid to give their... People who give their opinion and other people kind of chastise them for it. So, no, this is a place where you can give your opinion.
Yes, don't worry, we will not.
But make sure you give an actual argument. If you say the professor is full of shit, at least tell me why I'm full of shit, right? Like, because if you're saying that without anything to it, there's no point to it, right? So if you think that I said something wrong or you disagree with some of our points, just put them down, but spell out your argument, right?
And if you disagree with the whole adding casual mode, please explain why only Wind Waker should only be started off with hero mode, Link Soldier 1, then please give us a good essay, alright? Anyways, this is where we're signing off. This has been Link, and with me was the Professor and Danatos.
Laters.
Happy New Year.
And she'll see you guys next time.